And allow that space to arise for you. The mind might keep going, that's fine. Emotions will come and go, fine. The body is having sensations, fine, good, all good. But they all rest in a vast spaciousness. So see if in the silence you can tune yourself to the spaciousness and the stillness rather than the movement. So you can note that sounds rise and fall, thoughts rise and fall, and sensations rise and fall. They all return to spaciousness, silence, and stillness. And from that space are born again. Rise, abide for a while, and fall away. Allow yourself to identify with the spaciousness that holds all things. And take yourself to your heart. And return in your heart to the vision of being in the boat with your guide on the water. So here you have an image. It's a living image. It's not a static photograph or painting. But you're living in the movement. Some people are visual, some are not. What's most important is you have the sensation. And again, as this is inner vision and inner sight, it has its own particular quality, just as outer sight has. And the quality of inner sight is that it is multidimensional, that it exists on many levels of our consciousness. So while we have an image here of ourselves in a boat, on water, with a spiritual guide, we are also provoking a sensation in our consciousness of confidence, of clarity and direction, and of being held by great love. The word dharma comes from a Sanskrit root which means to hold above, to hold up. So as you are resting here in the boat with your teacher crossing the water, you are in your dharma, you are being held above your suffering. And what is holding you above your suffering is the image of your guide, the outer image of your guide, and the inner realization of the preciousness of this moment. Your recognition of your freedoms and your gifts. The amazing uniqueness and particularness of your life will never ever rise again. This moment will never ever come again. And therefore it is so precious. So the first part of our contemplation is to recognize our freedoms and our gifts, which we've been doing. So here in your inner sight, just call up one or two of those freedoms and those gifts that we've talked about that resonated with you. What are you free from? And what are you free to? What are the gifts giving you the opportunity for? And allow those to stoke your confidence internally. Feel the momentum and the energy of them. The second part of your meditation is to consider, with such a precious life, with all of these freedoms and all of these gifts, what is your role? What is it that you are being asked to step into? This extraordinary momentum, where is it carrying you? And to consider now, again, that virtue that you were thinking of. To call up the virtue that you wish to grow within yourself. And to play, we're just considering here, this is the inner space. Meditation is not a space of work, it's a space of play. So you're playing with the consideration, what if this was the only thing my life was for? What if all of my actions, my job, my family, my relationships, my social life, my meditation, etc., what if those were all arenas that were simply rising for me to practice and develop this virtue? And to sense the sweetness and the simplicity of that kind of thought. Only this, just to grow your love, grow your compassion. And so start to sense, here you are in this boat with your teacher, crossing the water, start to sense this power begin to grow within your being. And this power gives you the ability that anywhere you go and wherever you are, you can sense this virtue inside of you, and you can offer it out. So there's no outer circumstance that needs to rise, but you always have the inner circumstance in which this virtue is growing. So that you now have the power to recognize just how to act from this virtue, as if this virtue is the focusing lens for your life now. Like putting on rose-colored glasses, you put on the glasses of patience, or the glasses of dreaming, or the glasses of compassion, whatever it is that you're working with. And just play in your mind's eye with looking around with those glasses, through the glasses of this virtue. And call one vision to you in particular. Maybe it's someone you have a hard time with, maybe it's someone you love. But just think of one circumstance in your life. Place yourself there and look through the glasses of this virtue. How does it look to you? What's the quality? What's the feeling? And as you begin to come out of meditation slowly, 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 see if you can make the transference from the inner to the outer and maintain that sense of the virtue, wearing the view of the virtue. Like slipping a gel in a light so everything changes color. Our perspective is everything. Perspective is everything. So you can practice this meditation on your own, in your own life. Sit down, call up this image, think about the things you're free from, think about the great gifts that you have in this life, and then remind yourself what it is that you personally want to be using your life for. What is it that you are trying to grow within yourself? And call that up, and then sit there. And our imaginations are such extraordinary instruments, and they are highly atrophied most of the time. So a lot of the spiritual life is just working the imagination, and it's amazing how quickly your life will shift. So you habituate yourself to a certain view, and then you try to stabilize that through your day. Just try to stabilize. Try to remind yourself. You can put write your virtue on Post-it notes and put it up all over your house. Like my mom used to do that in her car, but it was about slouching. She wanted to have better posture, so she'd put like sit up, like all over the place. So you can just put patience or, stillness. Whatever it is that you're working on, slash and clash or whatever Kelly said, it's like, it doesn't have to be in some kind of formal way, it can be an image, it can be something that's meaningful for you, but find a way to remember it. And one of the ways we do this in our lineage is that we keep a little book that we check 6 times a day. And many of you are already doing this, but for the ones that aren't, I'm mentioning it. So that's a very practical way. So it's like breakfast, snack time, lunch, snack time, dinner, bedtime. You go like, how am I doing on patience? And you just think about it. And it's for you. But you don't have to do it that way. You can do it all kinds of ways. I don't know, ladies, you can put 6 braids in your hair during the day, and then take out 1 braid and think about your virtue during that time, or something, So make it playful, make it fun for yourself, but you have this power in you. But again, unless you work it, it doesn't grow on its own. You actually have to practice it, okay? And this is the beautiful, exquisite, joyous, and very challenging work of a spiritual life. So I thought I'd tell you one more story, and then we'll have some questions, if people have questions, which I haven't done in the other workshops, but this is the last one in this format for a little bit of time. So this is a story that I've had with me for many, many years now, and I really love. And I've worked with it in various capacities, and it has a lot of different resonances, so I'm not going to say too much about why I'm necessarily telling it in this context, in this class. You can make those connections for you or not make those connections for you, and that's fine. Okay. This is a story from, it's an old Japanese story called Hagoromo, and that means the feather cloak or the angel's mantle. Okay. And no one knows who wrote it. It's one of those that it's like, it's so old, no one knows where it came from. And it's been told in so many different ways and so many different times. Pavel knows it well. So here's how this goes. It's a beautiful spring night, and there's a group of fishermen, and they've been out fishing. This is their job. It's hard work, fishing. They're workmen, they're ordinary people, and they're out for a day's work. And the day is coming to a close, and they pull back in. And most of the fishermen sort of go off. They go to their homes and go on with their day. And this one particular fisherman comes out of the boat, and he's really taken by how beautiful the spring night is. It's a particular gift, spiritual gift, just to notice. Just to notice that it's a beautiful night is a spiritual power, okay? Different than worldly power. Worldly power would want to buy the night, try to own the night, but just to notice. So he's appreciating the spring night, and he's sort of thinking to himself, this is a special night. You know, you get that feeling where it's sort of like, this day is special. You don't really know why, but sometimes you just wake up and you're like, huh, special day. So he's having one of those moments. And he's walking, and he looks at this tree. And in the tree, he sees something shimmering. And he thinks, well, what is that? I've never seen anything like that before. And he goes over, and there's this cloak in the tree. And he immediately goes, I've never seen anything like this. This is something totally precious. And as we do as humans, he thinks, I'm going to take it. This is really precious, something rare. I'm going to take it. And he says, I'm going to take it home. I'm going to make it a treasure of my house. I'm going to invite the local elders to come and witness my treasure. And he all of a sudden is on this whole fantasy about what this treasure is going to do for him, you know, and how it's going to make him really famous in the town. And his night's really suddenly gotten much better because he's found a treasure. So he reaches out to take the cloak, and as he takes the cloak, a being appears. And he turns, and he's also never seen a being like this before. And the being says to him, that's mine. That's my cloak. And he says, basically, in the Japanese text, he says, finders keepers, losers weepers. Sorry. I found it, I'm taking it home. Right? And this creature says to him, that's not something for mortals. That's an angel's cloak, and it's my cloak. And I can't return to heaven without it. So now we have to just take in this moment in the story. So this is a man who is going from having a lovely night to finding something quite extraordinary to seeing an angel. And he's seeing an angel full on, and the angel's telling him, I'm an angel, and this is my cloak. And he's engaging in this conversation, okay? This is already quite an extraordinary event. And he says to the angel, I don't want to give you your cloak back. I like the cloak. I'm sorry you can't get to heaven, but I found the cloak. And he says, I'm a fisherman. I'm just an ordinary man. I'm not really that kind of a man. I'm kind of an asshole, is basically what he says in, you know, slightly better, beautiful Japanese poetry. But he says, like, I'm a fisherman, I'm an asshole, I don't want to give your cloak back. Sorry. So we do this, we have this idea of who we are and we cling to it for all it's worth, especially the negative parts, actually. We're like really confident about the negative parts of ourselves, and we're like, this is who we are. So here's this man, he's standing in front of an angel, and he's trying to prove to the angel that he's an asshole. And the angel's looking at him, and she pleads with him again, and he just keeps saying, I won't do it, I can't do it, I found this, I want it, and I refuse to be kind, I refuse to change. And so the angel goes, okay. And then the angel starts to die in front of him and goes through this. In the play, it's called The 5 Signs of an Angel's Decline, which is very interesting. So the angel starts to, they say the garlands start to droop on this being. She starts to become very sad and starts to fade, and is crying. The angel's crying, and she's crying that the path, in the text it's very beautiful, she cries that the path is becoming lost to her. She can't see the path to heaven anymore. She feels the earth becoming hardened underneath her feet. She feels her body starting to decay and harden around her. And basically she's becoming human and experiencing the sorrow of a human path when there's no spiritual path. And the fisherman is witnessing this. So what has happened here is that he's found this cloak, which you can think of as a view. He has an opening to an extraordinary view. He has a moment of spiritual teaching when he finds that cloak, and he recognizes how extraordinary that view is. And as we do in our worldly life, he immediately thinks, I'm going to use it for my worldly existence. This is an amazing spiritual opening, and I'm going to get a better job with it, or something like that, right? That kind of worldly power that I was talking about with Ram Dass. Like, what am I expecting? I'm going to get more money or something. And he won't give the cloak back. And so he meets this angel, and now they've exchanged positions. So actually, he's the angel because he has the view of the angel. He's holding on to the angel's cloak. He has the view of the angel. And he's now looking at the angel who's becoming a human being in front of him. So he's seeing himself. So this amazing divinity has occurred where he's exchanged himself with another. He's not doing any Buddhist practice. It's just happened for him. And he's watching himself die. He's watching his own humanity and how horrible it is. And he's moved, finally. And he says, I can't bear to watch you. I can't bear to watch this. I can't bear to watch you suffer like this anymore. And he says, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that I acted this way. I will give you the cloak back. I'll give you your view back. I'll give you your divinity back. I'll see you that way. And so the angel goes, thank you. I appreciate that. And he says, but before I do, I would like you to teach me. I would like you to teach me how to get to heaven. So this is good now. He's improving. He's like in front of an angel, and he recognizes that probably it would be good to ask for some teachings. And so he says, would you please help me get to heaven? And specifically in the play, he says, would you teach me the dance that goes to heaven? Which is also very telling. So there's this sense when you're in front of a true spiritual energy, a true opening that is not clouded by selfishness and clouded by greed, that's a dance. That energy is a dance. So it's like he's seeing this being dance, and he says, would you teach me this dance that would take you to heaven? And the angel says, I will. I will teach you this. It would be my joy to teach you this. But you have to give me back the cloak so I can do my thing, And he says, yeah, but how do I know if I give you the cloak, you're not going to take off and leave me? And the angel looks at him so simply, and she says, deceit is for humans. There's no deceit in my realm. And he really takes this in, that he's basically, he's looking from his own narrow view at this much wider view, and he's judging this being by his own narrow view. And she points this out to him. And he feels ashamed, and once again he says, I'm so ashamed. A very, very important part of the spiritual path is shame/humility. You know, not shame in the way that we make it guilty and we just turn it over and sort of tear ourselves up, but the shame where your illusion drops down. And he has this experience, and he says, you know, I give you back your cloak. And so he hands her back the cloak, and then there's this amazing moment where she dons the cloak. She dons the view of the divine. And so she does this in the play. It's a few lines while she's putting the cloak on. And he is like totally, his mind is blown by what he's seen. He's like, he can barely speak, you know, and he just goes, oh my God. You know, like, he could never have imagined what he has just witnessed, and he couldn't even speak what he's just witnessed. And she looks at him and she goes, I haven't started yet. I haven't even started to teach you yet. I just put my cloak on. And so, like, I love this part because it's, in a way, we expect so little. You know, we expect so little from our lives, actually. And so you see this progression of this fisherman where he sees the cloak, he sees this thing, he gets a little bit of teaching, and immediately he wants to grasp onto it and sort of fit it back into his life. But it's asking him to change. And, you know, this is also something to recognize, that if you have even the most minuscule spiritual insight, like you know enough to show up to a teaching, honestly, that little hole is like, you're a goner. It's like pulling a little thread on a sweater, and it's going to keep going. You can guarantee that for yourself. So even though I'm saying you have to keep practicing and all of that, that's true. I'm saying if you practice, it's going to go faster. But once it's pulled, your mind can never forget that. So it's going to keep going, you know. And for this fisherman, it went very quickly. He sees the cloak, the angel's there. And he has this conversation, right? And then he doesn't want to relinquish. He eventually does. And then she doesn't even formally teach him. And he's like blown out of his mind. And then she starts to dance. So then she teaches him the dance that takes her to heaven. And he doesn't speak the rest of the play. So she starts to dance, and he disappears. There's nothing for him to say. And that in and of itself is such a beautiful teaching that, you know, the highest realization that we can come to within ourselves is silence. Is, again, that spaciousness where we, as we currently are, say your name to yourself, has been so awed, so struck, that you're not even there anymore. Okay? So I think about this story, and the angel, of course, ascends, but the fisherman is with her, not with her. Who knows what happens to him? There's nothing more for him to say. So I think about this story, and I think, actually, this is happening to all of us all the time, and we don't recognize it, or we don't yet have the power to recognize it. And I think that we're all sort of seeing that cloak, and we all have a bit of that cloak, and we're trying to fit it into our lives. We all have beings who are like angels who appear to us, and we relate to them like ordinary human beings. And we diminish them for that. And then we witness them in sorrow. And so something is required of us to lay down our current sense of self. And you know, the story really shifts when he says, I'm moved. I've allowed myself to be moved by your suffering, by what I'm witnessing. Up until that point, they're having this conversation. He's like, I'm not changing. I am who I am. That's it. You know, and you can ask anything of me, and that's a feeling that we have in and of ourselves. This is it. Okay? And to allow yourself to be encountered, to allow yourself to be moved by the people around you. When you're in meditation, when you go in your meditation and you call up that virtue, let it move you. That is a power. that we have as human beings to consciously open ourselves to be changed. And it really, really is a power, and each of us have it. And it's an important spiritual power, and it's a gift that you can give to other people, to be moved by something. And we're like totally embarrassed. No one wants to admit that they're moved. We really don't, you know? It's like, it's fine. I used to work with high schoolers in New York City's in the outer boroughs. This was like, it was so hard for me. It was like the worst, you know? And they're all at that awkward age, and you know, and some of them were interested, but you get like 50, 16-year-olds, and the whole energy is like, what? You know, and I'm like, come on, so here we go. And it's, you know, it's kind of like, yeah. You know, and no one sort of wants to have any sense, like, they don't even want to smile. You know, they all got their game face on, like, I'm going to come in, I'm going to leave just the same. Like, you're not going to affect me, right? And we all have some sense of that in ourselves. And I don't know why it is that we get embarrassed when we start crying, or, well, I do know why, because we get vulnerable, and because we misunderstand our vulnerable state, we think we're going to be harmed when we're vulnerable, and we think that people will make fun of us or something like that in that space. But that is the most precious space, when you're moved. You see, so when something is moving, you know, like this water, when it's moving, it's penetrable, it's living. Life is movement. If you're not moving, if you're holding on to your sense of self, you're dead. That's death, actually. Death is not what we think. The dying of the body, our body will all pass, but the real death that we fear is this sense of self that we can't shift. So if we can soften and allow ourselves to be moved by the people around us, by our own heart, by our own interests, we're living. We're really living. And that life can go on eternally. That life will go on eternally. It is going on eternally, whether we shut ourselves off to it or not, okay? So I just wanted to share that story with you. You can think about how you are and are not the fisherman, and how you are and are not the angel, and what is the cloak for you. Yeah. So one last thing before we have questions. You've got an envelope in here. So we can just look at the image first, if you don't mind. Everybody have their packet? So I'll just explain this a little bit. So this is a traditional image of the feet of an awakened being. And I'm not going to go over all the insignia. You can look up the 8 auspicious symbols online if you're interested, the 8 auspicious symbols, and you can read about these. Again, these are relating to the particular inner spiritual vision that we get, where things have multidimensional meanings. So all of these symbols are symbolic for actions, for states of consciousness, for certain stories. And as you learn them, they remind you of that. But what I wanted to say, the reason why I have this image here, is that when the Buddha passed, our historical Buddha, when Shakyamuni Buddha passed, the last thing that he said that is recorded, of course, who knows, the students recorded it, but so they heard. The last thing he said is, you need to work out your path for yourself. He said, all phenomena is changing, all phenomena will fall away. You have a precious opportunity in this life. And he said, with diligence, work out your spiritual path for yourself. So because of that, and because of other teachings he gave, for the first 500 years or so after the Buddha's passing, no images were made of the Buddha. And he also said this very clearly. He said, don't make images of me. I am not the savior. I am not the salvation. You are your salvation. You work it out for yourself. And so the way they would make note of the awakened consciousness was they would draw footprints. And it was this idea of like, the Buddha has been here. You know, the Buddha walked a path. Remember that you must take your own path. You have to walk your own path. And I find that very moving and also very encouraging, you know. Be on this earth. Be here in your path, walk your path. And then after 500 years or so, like, people couldn't stand it anymore. So they had to start making Buddha images. You know, it's like our it's very hard for our minds to stay in that mystery and that openness for too long. We want an image, we want a dogma, we want something to say like, there was a Buddha, that was the Buddha, you know? But actually, the awakened consciousness, which manifests as the Buddha in a human being, the awakened consciousness is saying, I'm not the Buddha. The Buddha is your own mind. Go find the awakenedness in your own mind. So don't forget that. And then I just put a quote from the Bhagavad Gita on the back, and this will help you to remember this too. I love this quote. Many of you have heard me teach on this before. So it's better to do your own duty badly than to perfectly do another's. You are safe from harm when you are doing what you should be doing. So this is about something that's, in Hinduism, they call it svadharma, your dharma, your truth. So to work out your truth for yourself. And I don't know about y'all, but if I'm honest, which I try to be, I would say I spend a good amount of the day thinking I could do this better than I'm doing. You know, most of the things I'm doing, I'm like, I could be better at it. So this is the first line, you know, but do your own duty. You're probably going to think you're doing your duty badly. That's sort of the nature of being a human being, okay? Fine, but better to do yours than to be constantly living in some other person's image. Don't try to do my practice. Don't try to do Tanel's practice or Pavel's practice or Brian's practice or anyone else's practice. You can be inspired by their practice. That's the point of having community and friends and teachers, is that you have a model and you be inspired. But they have to inspire you internally, and then you got to work it out for yourself, right? And we really forget this all the time. And we spend so much time thinking like, well, if I had that, or if I was like that, when I'm like that, then. And our whole life goes by like that. And that is a damn shame. It really is, to waste your life like that. You know? So do your own duty, whatever you think your duty is. If you do it badly, fine, do it badly. We can only do another's duty perfectly in our mind. Have you ever thought this, like, well, if I was Lady Gaga, I'd be awesome, you know? Or like, if I had that job, you know? Or like, if I had Bill Gates' money, I would know exactly what to do with Bill Gates' money, you know? It's like, we're so good at living other people's lives, like really well, you know? And meanwhile, our own life just goes by and we're living in some fantasy. So you're safe from harm when you're doing what you should be doing. You know, what does this mean? Those fantasies of trying to live someone else's life and even to try to live, so try to catch this, try to hear this. There's your idea of what you should be doing, and there's the ideas that from society you have internalized of what you should be doing, and then there's really what you should be doing. And I don't think anybody's confused about what they really should be doing, but I do know that the noise of all the other shoulds is very loud, and I acknowledge that. Totally. But those other shoulds will harm you. They will take you off from your true path. So you are safe from harm when you are doing what you really should be doing, and your life, your mission in this life, should you choose to accept it, is to try to really go into that as deeply as you can and grow it with as much passion and as much fervor as you can muster. And if you do that, that is virtue. If you are really living your own true path, you will inherently be virtuous. It will spontaneously come, okay? So remember this, and you know, you can hang this up somewhere or not. If it doesn't do anything for you, toss it. But if it does something for you, you know, hang it up and remind yourself, like another post-it note as you walk out, like, right, my feet on the ground. I'm in my life. I'm not in someone else's life. This is my life. How do I want to be in my life today? How do I want to live my life? How do I want to be in relation to other people? Take the power back, you know. Don't give it to someone else, and don't give it to some fantasy of yourself. That's hard, okay? That's a real spiritual practice. And anything else that you do, fine, but try to make that the center of your day. That is the teaching of the gift. You have a great gift in this life to have the opportunity to have the mind to do that. And if you do that, not only do you protect yourself from harm, but you protect everyone else from harm too. If you think about the times in your life where you've tried to fit yourself into some role and you know it's not really your role in a relationship or in a job or something like that, it's horrendous. It's horrendous for you and everyone else around you. You know, you end up lying, you end up like, you get tense all the time. I mean, for me, it's very clear, like, when I start to get tense, I know I'm placing myself in a role that I shouldn't be in. I'm not where I should be. And that's not anyone else's fault but my own. So I can shift that in the moment if I have the power to. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But you can work it out for yourself, you know, where it is you feel that. But non-virtue, harmfulness comes from being anything but authentic. So try to be as authentic as you can, as honest as you can with yourself. And that includes confusion, by the way, a lot of it. And confusion is just fine, in that you can work with it. So if you're confused, be confused, and see what you need to do with your confusion. Okay, so we have a couple minutes. I just thought if anyone has any questions, so this is the end of our part one, and many of you have come to all of these. And the next section in this series is going to be the resting retreat. And that's in May, what is it, May 10th, 11th, 12th, something? We're already full, so that retreat is closed at the moment. But I might review that material for people when we start up again. And then what I'm thinking of doing is somewhere in the summer, maybe in July or so, I'll have a meeting where people who are, some of you, as I said, have been coming to all of these, and maybe I hope you've been doing these meditations and thinking about this material. So I thought I'd have 1 or 2 sessions where we can come and sort of re-go into things and look at the meditations in more depth, and if questions are coming up for people. And then in September, we'll start straight off in September with the next step, which is the underworld. And then we'll keep working through next year. Okay, so that's sort of the plan of the schedule. I just want to give you guys an overview of that. So, does anybody have any questions or, yeah?
Could you really quickly go over what was discussed in the last class? If that's even
in the last class? Sure. Yeah, and you can watch, is it still up online?
Oh, okay, I'll just watch that.
So you can watch it online, but it's, you know, it's good to say, just for a reminder for everyone, is to say that the root of a spiritual practice, so these are the 2 roots, as I said, this is the inner root, the one we've been talking about today, coming into confidence about your own gift, your own opportunity in this life. And the outer root is that you find a teacher, is that you find a guide. And you learn how to work with that person in a way that is meaningful for your life. And that, in a way, is the entirety, actually, of the spiritual practice. You can relate everything to the relationship with the teacher at the end of the day. So it's that path, as all steps on the path, is very deep. So you can take a look, and then if you have questions, give me a call or send me an email. I'm happy to go over it more with you. What else? And any questions with people online, too? Yes?
I'm wondering, when you talked about tension, how do you know when you're going through these practices, when you might label something as tension, but maybe it's just stepping out of your comfort zone? Thought maybe you could.
Mm-hmm. So I think these are things that each of us need to work with in the laboratory of our own inner being. But I find for myself that the sense of stepping out of my comfort zone brings disorientation and a kind of moment of sometimes sorrow or sadness, sometimes excitement. But I find that tension, for me, when I say tension, it is related to the sense of trying to make something happen. And now sometimes I can be knocked out of my comfort zone, and the habit of uncomfortableness of being out of my comfort zone creates tension, where I try to stabilize myself by making something happen. But the openness of being pushed out of the comfort zone is quite a gift, even though it might come with these sensations that we then label as like not comfortable. But the spiritual practice is not here for your comfort. In fact, it's the complete opposite, right? The spiritual practice is here to relieve you of your suffering. And actually, the state that we come into the spiritual practice with is being very, very comfortable with our suffering. Whatever lip service we might give to it, we're really comfortable in our habits of suffering. And so, of course, if you're comfortable with your suffering, it's going to be uncomfortable when you're kicked out of it or you're asked to really look at it. So I would say it's interesting to note for yourself when you feel like you've been kicked out of your comfort zone, what do you do? And that's a very important moment in your practice. And so if tension comes up in that space, then you can see, oh, what's the tension connected to? What do I do here? You know, am I trying to fix it? Am I trying to push myself back where I was? Am I trying to like skip ahead to be somewhere that I'm not, or whatever it is, right? Do I go dull? Do I pull away? Do I become aggressive? So this tells us a lot about ourselves. You know, the joy of a spiritual path and working with a teacher is that hopefully they'll come and just keep knocking you out of your comfort zone, you know, and that brings up all your afflictions. And if they're not brought up, you can't work with them, right? So, but for me, the tension really has a very clear pull towards myself and the self that is trying to enact and achieve something in that situation. But it might be different for you, so you need to sense what is the difference between your tension and your openness, because actually being out of your comfort zone is your openness, is that spaciousness in which Ella Fitzgerald said, I'm going to sing. So if tension had come in, she wouldn't have been able to speak that. If tension had come in, she probably would have been like, I'll do the dance my mom taught me, or something, right? I had this experience once where I was in Peter Pan. I was really little. And I played the daughter of Wendy. Do you all know the story of Peter Pan? I'm not going to tell the whole thing right now. But anyway, Wendy, who goes away with Peter Pan, has a daughter. And I played the daughter in the end, okay? And so they would have this thing where, and I would fly. Then Peter comes and Peter takes the little daughter away, right? This was my role. I was like 10 or something. And the way that they would fly in those days, these are like old school theater. So you get some like harness and you're hooked up to this wire, you know. And then this like 300-pound guy in this community theater, he would jump off a ladder holding onto the thing. And then you'd like, you know, like that was the whole flying path, is you'd go boom, boom, right? And and there could only be 2 harnesses hooked up at any given time. So there was me and the woman playing Peter Pan. And I'm laying in my bed, and I'm like, you know, acting, being asleep. And I'm sleeping, and I'm holding onto my little blanket. And they switched the wires. And Peter Pan is supposed to come through the window. And it just happened that on that day, in this community theater that I worked in when I was growing up, they would invite a blind audience to the dress rehearsal. So the audience is blind. So they hear the pull they can hear the pull of the wire, and they know the story, so they're assuming Peter Pan is flying. So they've switched the wires, the guy jumps off the ladder, I fly out of my bed. I smack into the wall of the nursery across the way, and like kind of like slide down and like smack the floor, and the audience goes, right? And then you can hear the director from the back of the house, this woman, Ada Pormel, she was amazing. She smoked like, 80 packs of cigarettes a day, and she used to be in the ballet roost, and she just goes, wrong person, from the back of the house. So, but I tell this story because I just went back and I got in bed, and everyone was like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, what happened? And I distinctly remember, you know how things stick in your head when you're young, certain things go in. And it's interesting because here it is coming out. I distinctly remember someone, I don't know who it was, but came and I heard them speaking to my mother, and they said, she's not seriously injured because she wasn't tense. Because I didn't know what was happening, so I was relaxed. So when the thing was pulled, because the angle I was pulled on could have broken my neck. And I did have a little bit of whiplash, but I was basically fine because I was just like, I don't know, whoop. What happened? I'll get back in bed. Are we going to do the scene? So that really stuck in me, that to be able to be soft and open, things can move through you. And of course, there's some repercussion. But if you're holding against them, it's, you know, I mean, Heather knows, she's a physical therapist. Like, if you're tense and you hit someone when they're tense, they'll get way more injured than if they're malleable to move, okay? So this tells us, you know, this is something about the spiritual path. And again, that sense, like, if we can let ourselves be soft, you can never be harmed if you're fluid. But if you have a self that's really clear on your points of view, of course your points of view can get smacked and, you know, hurt. Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? Any questions online? Okay. All right, so let's do a little dedication. More musical theater stories? So close your eyes for a moment. So a lot of words were said today, a lot of thoughts. And just feel that whatever was meaningful and useful for you has gone in. And you don't have to have any tension of holding on to any of it. Whatever seed needed to be planted was planted. Whatever seeds needed to be watered were watered. So feel that you can relax. And as you leave this class, you can be open and easy. And recall once more that virtue that you're working with for yourself. And let it infuse your being. Feel that it's effortless to put it on for you. And send that virtue out on beams of light from all the pores of your skin. And on the tips of the beam of light, feel like there are loving hands that are offering that virtue, or a sweet song that's offering the virtue, a sweet smile. And let it touch the other people in the room. And let it touch the people in all of the rooms around us, in the hotel across the street, and all the beings in their cars in the 405. Keep sending this light out. It's effortless for you to send this light. Endless offerings of this virtue. You'll never run out. Feel that all beings in the country have gotten a special delivery of this quality of heart delivered to them, and it infuses their being and changes them, changes their perspective. Not because they need to be changed, but simply the quality of our humanity, the openness that we have, and the ability we have to be moved rises in them as your light touches them. And feel that it spreads across the globe, Europe, Asia, Africa, Antarctica, to all the beings in the sea, all the fishermen on all the boats, all the pilots flying planes in the air, and the people sitting in the planes, the birds. And feel it go out and out, covering planets yet unknown and yet unseen, beings in other realms that we can barely sense and not even imagine. And feel that the light and goodness of this virtue streams through every crack and corner of the known and unknown universe. And then sense that all of those beings begin to send that virtue back to you. And feel the light now reversing and streaming into you through all pores of your skin, anointing you, blessing you. Just say to yourself, this is really happening. And be given these blessings right now, the blessings of this virtue. And with these blessings come powers, the power to act with this virtue, the power to see this virtue in others, the power to grow its view within you, to never be without it, the power to act through this virtue in many ways, skillfully, in ways that are meaningful for others, and serve them, and increase their goodness. All these blessings are pouring into you like showers of light. And feel grateful that you were able to come today, that you had the mind and the heart to be able to be here and a healthy body to be here. And be happy for all the others who made it here, and all the others who this teaching will touch just simply through all of our actions. And feel that you used your time well, no regrets, and that you can leave the center feeling free, feeling blessed, and among friends. Okay. All right, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing time with me. I really appreciate the opportunity to study this material more deeply, and you give me that opportunity, and I'm very, very grateful to you for that, and I'm very grateful to be able to see people in my life who have interest in learning this material, and who come and, who offer themselves to these explorations. It's not nothing. It's really something quite profound, and it changes my life. It gives me hope. It moves my heart, and when I'm scared or when I'm sad, I think of you. And so I really appreciate you. Thank you for being here. And please stay on your path. And let me know if I can help you in any way. I'll write my email up on the board, and I hope to see you all again at some point soon. Have a lovely evening. Yeah. Can you announce some of them? Oh yeah, can I say one thing too? I was told, I'm sorry, I'm not very good at this, but probably because I'm sitting in this position.